Welcome to Clark Lindsey. We're here at the Masterpiece Gardens in our backyard. We do really know how important it is for connection to the outdoors, and so we are so fortunate to be on 27 acres here at Clark Lindsey of beautiful landscape and prairie. We also butt right up against Meadowbrook Park, which is 130 acres of walking and beautiful sculptures and things like that. So today we are just going to take you on a garden walk with our horticulturist, Randy Hauser. And then once we're done touring our gardens, then we will walk over and meet with Corey Pinter, our groundskeeper, so he can introduce you to our new residents, about 30,000 of them, our bees.
My name is Randy Hauser, and I am the landscape designer, horticulturist at Clark Lindsey Village. And we're together today so that I can give you a look at one of our showcase gardens. It's called the Masterpiece Garden. It went in, most of the parts of it went in 2007. So it's not a mature garden, it's like a middle-aged garden. So you'll see some things that have been here a long while, some things that have been here just a matter of years, because we keep adding things to it. So we'll give you a little tour. Basically, as an intro to it, we would love to have you visit the garden. I think you really like it. All right, so it has a formal entrance. We just call this the arbor. Over here you have a trailing, a vining hydrangea. The whole point of this garden, and really any of our gardens, is I really want people to say, I wonder what I'm going to see next. And that could be in one of our little gardens. This is one of our larger gardens. So I'm hoping that we keep them fresh. We hope that we have them always in, you know, a high level of finish. We really want people to come as often as possible because I think the garden looks different every day of the year. So some things to look at, and we're lucky. Every season of the year has something different blooming. I like this garden even in the winter because the different plants hold snow differently. But here, I think this is a nice combination. Here's a flowering cactus, which a lot of homeowners do that, but not a lot of public gardens do that. And a lot of it is timing. So you just hope that you see something like that. There's some in the background that are going to be loaded with flowers, and that for a split second you sort of forget you're in central Illinois. And then to the left of those is just a very nice, totally different plant, totally different climate that they would be in are the ferns. So truly a garden like this, if you're not a big fan of cactus, I'll bet you'll be a fan of ferns. And then you just keep going until you find something you like. I don't have the square footage of the garden, but it's our biggest garden. It has, I think, besides just the visuals, we try to provide things that you can touch, depending on your abilities, depending on what you can reach. I mean, no one's going to want to touch the cactus, I don't think. But, I mean, all this stuff, there'll usually be something that you can see, touch, smell during the season. Some of it's just beautiful things. So it's truly I think it's called Masterpiece Garden, but it's very much a sensory garden. All right, so this one you just have to wait. You would have to come back in a month and a half. These are daylilies. They'll be on display. And a lot of these plants, most people will know, not everyone will know, that doesn't matter. A lot of them wander. So we probably planted a formal setting of this Russian sage, and we just, some gardens try to really contain it and say, you are staying here. You'll see a lot of wandering in this garden. If it gets out of hand, then we sort of step in. But I like the chanciness of things trying out the new ground. And as long as it looks interesting to me, we let that happen. We let that happen. All right, even from here, you can hear, I think you'd be able to hear the water. So I think from almost all points of the garden, you can hear the water from our fish pond waterfall. So we'll head that way. I'll point out, I mean, I love plants. Some of my favorites are this, it's Carolinia hornbeam. I don't know the science names of everything. I just know this as musclewood. And if you get close, it literally, once this tree is established, the bark just, it feels like the sinews of muscle. So I just think that is beautiful. And not that everyone's going to be able to crawl in here and touch it. You can at least see it. Again, it's another wonderful thing in the winter. If snow's up to this. So even if people aren't looking for things, I just want things available if you even find them by chance. But that's musclewood, one of my favorites. A lot of, besides the beauty of this garden, we're promoting the residents and visitors just to get out here, one, to be outside like Sarah said, and then just to get exercise. I mean, this is a nice incline here. So it's just very good physical fitness. It doesn't matter if you're walking it, walk using a walker, even with a chair. It's just, some of this is very demanding. Even this has some texture that you can feel if you're looking for it. I don't know what full lengths are. Some people love to do laps around here, and just to get literally their miles in, or half miles, whatever they like. And while they're doing it, we just want as much neat stuff for them to look at as possible. Another very interesting, the whole tree is interesting, but some folks, some visitors they're limited to what they can see right in front of them. This is another tree that is just a perfect thing for that. Very interesting. You don't see too many of them. Sometimes I have to look at the names just like the visitors, but it's a lacebark elm. Just very, very interesting. And you can be right at eye level with that. You can hear the water behind you. And it just adds up to a really neat experience. So probably the most popular feature besides the plants of this garden is this water, this pond. Of course, it's not a natural pond. It was built, so we have a pump system. So a lot of things that you don't see make this, a lot of things that are unnatural make this thing look natural. So the pump runs all year. So it's very much, as long as the water is not frozen, the fish will live in here. Now, I'm going to walk right in front of you. At some point, especially certain parts of the day, the fish are very visible. Now, and we have koi in here. You can barely, there's one coming to the top, so that might register, but there's some whitish ones down there. Sometimes I think they can sense when a lot of people are around, and they're a little bit shy. But it's just a very active time for this pond even. You can just come here to visit the pond, because there are tadpoles in here. In early spring you will hear the toads or whatever's making the tadpoles, but truly a spring song. Later today, when this has more light, there'll be a fully blooming water lily. So you can really schedule your day by it. And it's just neat just to sit here. I love the sound of it as much as I love the visuals of it. And along with the water and the sounds and the plants, we know that this attracts a bunch of very interesting birds. And there's a lot of birders here, residents and visitors. So it's just a very neat package of things. You don't have to be a nature lover. You just have to, it's just a nice thing to have access to. Lots of events in this gazebo, very centrally located. Very neat views from there, wonderful photograph angles, and you're right near the water. Some of the non-plant elements that I just love are just having a big old rock sitting there. I don't know the history of that rock. I'm not a geologist, but I love the fact that it's in the garden now. and then let the plants soften up the edge of it. A lot of coneflower. Again, that's not in bloom yet, but it will be. And then this, I'm showing off a plant that's past its showiness, but this is shooting star. We have a lot of plants here that would be naturally in the prairies. So then we try to bring a lot of them, the cultivars of them, into the garden, so you can see them in a more of a sort of a formal setting. But very interesting plant, and then you can see what's left. And then this, I don't know if I can get seeds to fall out, but this is why they wander. This one was not planted here on purpose, but we let some of the happy accidents exist. So once you're sitting in here, I've seen people just reading the paper here, reading books. Some people just doing this for a long, long time. And that's, the whole point is it doesn't have to be some active, thrill-a-minute experience. I think people love the quietness of this place. So it's just a very neat, I think a unique feature. Over my shoulder is another big expanse of, there must be 18 different varieties of plants in there. Earlier it was bluebells, they're spent, but usually when something is out of season, we have something there to pick up the slack, something it sort of hands off to. So the purple flower over there, that's penstemon. It's another prairie plant that they've developed a cultivar. So it's, the bluebells handed off to that. Some hydrangea, a lot of people know hydrangea, that's going to be a beautiful white. A lot of people will know this one, this is lavender. It's a very old-fashioned plant, and it's just, we have a lot of blues in this garden. This is the one that, this is its time to shine. And if you, even if you brush up against this, you smell the lavender, and to me it's just a wonderful byproduct of this garden. And I don't care if people pick this stuff, because that's when you really get a smell of it. And then usually if you're studying this, you see something over on the horizon that hopefully they want to know more about. But even if they come just to visit one plant, I'm happy. And then you can see how close it is to our actual residence wings. So it's very, it sort of seems like we're far away from everything, but we aren't. We're literally 5 minutes from where the people live. All right, some of the things, there are parts of this garden that we try to sort of keep formal, but I think you can already guess that I don't mind if it gets informal. This is catmint. It looks a lot like the lavender, but it's just a different plant. Truly, it's more scent. You can see, let's see, you don't have to look too hard, but you can already see honeybees on it. And they'll let you get pretty close, I think. They're sort of shy. Especially when the sun's out, this is loaded with honeybees. So eventually we're going to transition into a little segment on the honeybees. I know that these bees are visiting the hive that we've started here. So it's just a neat combination. And you don't have to love the bees. Some people don't like the bugs, but I think the bees will leave you alone. Now this, to some people, they say, oh my gosh, what's happening here? Because it looks very random. We know exactly what's happening here. Here's more lavender. That was planted on purpose. We want that. If you are limited in your mobility, you can be in whatever device, your walker, your chair, and you can get right in there and say, man, I remember that when I was whatever age. Or you create your new memory right then and there. This, it looks a lot like dill. This is fennel, and it's, a lot of people, it's a spice. I think it's a beautiful plant. I would say this, you can see a ton of them. it probably started with just a random plant about 5 or 6 years ago. And then it just seeds like crazy, and we let it seed like crazy. Besides I think its prettiness, we know that it's a host plant for swallowtail butterflies. So that's later in the season, but you will see this, crawling with the most beautiful caterpillars. So that's, and we keep things reined in as much as we can, but just a very unique plant. And we think it mixes well with some of the things that we have here on purpose, like these grasses. The neat thing about this grass, this is prairie dropseed, also a native plant. In the autumn, when this makes its flowers, and the flowers they're inconspicuous, but the grass's flowers, to my senses, it smells like buttered popcorn. So I just want people to find things like that and think that that's sort of neat. So, and we can stay in this garden a little bit. These are more volunteers. I keep talking natives, but they're not the only things we have. This is Brazilian verbena, and I just know that this volunteers like crazy, and it's just a nice airy purple, sometimes when you don't have any other color going on. And I say every day this garden looks different. I think every year it truly looks different, depending on what we let wander. Now, right where you're at, we can, what I think is important in a big garden like this and on the whole site is you echo things. If you really like some plants, not that you don't want to overdo it, but the same, like the catmint that was just over that way, we have another hit of that here. One, because we know the plant will do well, and it's a pretty plant. It's a very dependable plant. We know that it's a pollinator, so that's the blue that we visited before. And I want people to sort of see the thread of certain things. So you can see that bee could not be happier, and he doesn't care how close you are. And more likely than not, it's visiting the hive that we're going to see very shortly. Just working very hard. And let's see, this is another one that you just have to be patient for. This is butterfly bush. It's not a native, but it's such a perfect, magenta, I think magenta is the right color, but just a striking color. It's starting to form its flowers. It's not the best food source for pollinators, but it is a food source. So it's sort of like candy. It's not like what they would get from their mothers probably, but it's still very interesting. Here's this plant, I think, does a lot of neat things. This is Baptisia, which is false indigo, another prairie plant. So you would see this, if you're familiar with the area, Meadowbrook Park would have a lot of this. And the neatest part, and then this volunteers also, because you can tell this one sort of strayed off and we let it. This, I believe, is going to be a blue flower. The native one, I believe, is a blue. They also have whites, but just absolutely beautiful things. And then when it's all said and done, these, you can see the seed pods already. When these dry and you walk by it, you can literally, it's like a baby's rattle, which it's just another added bonus. So the paths all connect. So I think that's important. And I think it's just a perfect mix. I love seeing the fennel grow with the Baptisia. Now, behind us, behind the camera, we missed the show timing of this by about 2 weeks, but that's all right. You can still get an impression of it. It's not all peonies, but 99% of these, they are peonies that are done flowering for the year. So you can get the scale. There are some tree peonies, there are the regular bush peonies, but literally hundreds of blooms all at once. And it's a little bit staggered because we wanted, there are early peonies, there are late peonies, and we wanted to extend that whole season as much as we could. But the peony season is pretty much done now. There's some very late ones, but we don't have any right in here. This area, it's not so much a plant area, but it's the Tai Chi circle. And we also hold a lot of various events here. It's just a nice common ground. If people do want to experience, I don't know the Tai Chi stuff, but it can be a very quiet, personal place for people. And I think that's an important thing to offer. Now here's a few more elements. This tree obviously was here before the garden, so they worked around the tree, which I think it's neat to have something from the past. It's a little bit out of scale, but right now we like the tree there. We like the larger trees. There's some oaks in here, so you get you get a sense of things from the past and the future, and I think that's sort of fun to melt all that. Well, I know we're here talking gardens, but since you have the long view, shuffleboard over there, golf stuff over there. So it's in a very small space. You got a lot of neat options for people, and they're not competing options. They somehow seem compatible here. All right, here's a few more plants, and then I think we're going to head toward the bees. Here's some more of the, like I keep calling them threads, but here's some of the Baptisia in bloom. Very pretty blue. And before we filmed here, we cut back the stuff that was like truly in people's way. But I like, and if the path is wide enough, I like leaving some things just so people can do this. You know, we would never force people to do that, but some people, they want to be right in the stuff. And it's worth, studying. That is a beautiful thing. But that's Baptisia indigo, basically. Another patch of daylilies they'll show their big value probably in 6 weeks or so. Various colors. Let's go around here. Where space allows, if someone is a resident here and they say, I'm moving here, I have some plants, can you use them? And we can't always find uses for them, but if we can, we love doing that. So you have these irises and these sedums and those ferns. They are basically plants shared from a residence of sort of a new resident from her old yard. And you know, they're quality plants. Of course, it means a lot to her to have them out here. But I just love the thought of this is sort of becoming like a heritage garden, where if I can make the design work, we're going to utilize some of the things that make it seem even more like home to people. All right. Here's sort of a holdover. This is another one of my favorite plants, allium, and there's probably 10 different kinds of allium. When they are going the strongest, it's a pure purple. They also have a white, but I think they are just as pretty like this. It's like the skeleton of what was happening. They'll persist probably another month or so, then they get sort of ratty, and then we just move them and then hope that something else is really neat to look at. Lots of more of the spiky blue. This one's a salvia. That's more of a purple. So we truly try to offer. We don't try things that we know will fail. Sometimes we put things in there that we want it to work. If it doesn't, we're not ashamed to say this didn't work, and then we find something that's even better. But that, in a nutshell, I know I sort of raced through things, it is the Masterpiece Garden. And I think it's an evolving garden. I think it changes as the conditions tell us, as the deer tell us. We get deer visiting this garden, so that's a challenge. but it's all a learning thing. Recently, I think we really completed the story of this garden, a possible part of the story, by establishing a beehive just east. We just left the Masterpiece Garden, and the nice part about that, the residents and visitors can see what we do and hopefully enjoy what we do, and then they also have the option as residents to do some gardening on their own. So not everyone wants to do it, but a lot of them do. We offer a lot of different possibilities for that. So come on in. You can see one of our latest developments are very accessible. I think we just call them pod gardens. And we have 2 of them right now. I know we want to do more of them, but you can sort of see the idea. Depending on your needs, if you're in a chair, or if you just need a lot of support when you're gardening, you can just pull right into here if that's what works best. And I think that's what has been very successful so far. For the most part, if you're here, you can reach for most of your garden. And the water's very nearby, it's on a hard path. So that's some of the most important stuff depending on your needs and wants as a gardener. Now you also have, these are also new, but we've had raised gardens in the past. This is it's just for different people for different needs. If people need more support, or if it's just very difficult to bend down a lot, this is what fits the bill for that. So you can see, this is the first year for these gardens. Very successful, very successful. They're loaded. It's been a perfect spring for gardens. A lot of heat, a lot of water. So we have a lot of those. I think there's going to be a lot more of these made as we go forward. And then we also have a lot of people that they still want to garden right in the ground, right in the earth. This is an example of that. It's an opportunity. This specific garden, the person brought in a lot of things from their home place, which instantly adds value, not only to them, but I think to us. I think this person has a story about each fence post in here, if you have the time for that. And we find the time for that. So lots of neat angles for gardens. And people, I mean, some years they're going to be able to do things in the ground, and then we know someday they might say, heck with the in the ground stuff. If I want something raised bed, we accommodate that also. So I'm impressed with how many gardeners there are here. There's usually a waiting list for these sites, and we like that. We want people wanting to be out here. We support them with whatever they need. Sometimes they bring outside help in. Now they can bring family in again for some of that. But even if that doesn't happen, we are more than happy to help with that. So that's Clark Lindsey Village Resident Gardens. This is the transition point between garden and activity type things. There's the shuffleboard, there's the golf, and now we have this very cool addition, the beehives. It's also the transition from formal gardening to, I call this gardening. It's not formal by any means. It's like fake prairie. We have a lot of tall grass. We promote the milkweed for a bunch of good reasons. One, it's a pretty plant. So it's a perfect handoff from formal beauty to a less formal beauty.
Yeah, we're just starting to smoke, and the fuel is just pure cotton with some wood chips. And what the smoke does, there's a myth with the bees. A lot of people think, and I thought for a while, and what it does is it makes them sleepy, or it simulates a fire, so they eat all of their honey and it slows them down. I think the science now is what it does is it binds to their antenna, and that keeps them from communicating with each other. So when you open the hive and one of the bees puts out the alarm pheromone, they're waiting for, X many number of bees to do the same thing to know they're not overreacting. And they just can't pick up that pheromone from anyone else. So they think everything's fine. So in reality, you can't have every single bee putting out the pheromone, but they all think it's just themselves. The tools for a beehive relatively minimal. You just have the smoker to calm them. You have a brush if you need to brush any bees off you or the frame or the box or anything. And then you have a hive tool, which is just to separate the frames and the boxes from each other, because the bees will collect tree sap and they make something called propolis, and it glues and waterproofs everything together. And it's just really hard to rip apart. So you just use this to slice the things, and it has a hook over here that you can use to pry frames up, and you'll see that in a second. In the hive, the bottom of the box, you'll see one green frame. So this is what's going to be in most of them, and there's going to be one green frame, and you can see the hexes are bigger, so they draw out bigger frames, and that lets the queen know to lay male bees. And this helps with pest management, because the Varroa destructor mite, they get in beehives and they completely decimate it. And they prefer to lay their eggs in male combs. So putting one of these in there ensures most of the mites go to this frame. Then once it's capped over, you take the frame out, put it in the freezer, and it kills all the mites. And it also kills the bees, but that's fine because most of them are male, and male bees don't walk for the hive. They sit in there, they eat honey, then they go on a mating flight and they die. Most likely any bee you've ever seen is a female, because that's the worker bees. So, if you're ready, we can get into it. And today is a perfect day for the bees. It's hot and humid, and they love that. They have to keep their hive at about 95 degrees to keep their eggs alive. So even when it's 60, they're walking to make their hive 95 degrees. So start out, yeah, we smoke the entrance. And we'll come into the back here. You want to smoke underneath the back here. I'll lay that there. And then about every 2 weeks you check for the queen, just make sure she's alive and laying eggs. And that involves either finding her or finding the eggs. You don't have to do both, but you definitely want to find one. And as you can see how well they glue that down. So you check for the queen from the bottom up, because she's gonna, the bees will lay all of the eggs in the bottom, ideally, and they put the honey at the top, and that's what they do in the wild. I'm not sure why, but they like to separate it. And you can even see in frames, if they have honey mixed with eggs, the honey's always higher up. So the queen's usually in the bottom 2 boxes. And that's good audio, if you can hear that. This hive is thriving.
Is it real heavy?
Yeah, they're heavy. So there's that green frame. That's just the pest management. And then you just remove frames here and we look for the queen. So this is a frame they haven't drawn out. So it's just the plain plastic. There's no beeswax on it. So they're still walking on that. And that's no issue. They'll get there when they want to. Get to a frame with some honeycomb. This frame has a little bit of comb drawn out, and you can see that. Whoops. And the bees are very tidy. If you break the comb like I just did right there, they'll fix that in a jiffy. They're very hard walkers. But yeah, all these cells are empty, so they just have this drawn out. And so the bottom box, they haven't really moved in yet. They've mostly moved into the second one. Bees need about, in Illinois, 40,000 of them to make it through the winter. And we started the hive with 10,000. So, where's the brush? Usually by the time winter comes, they can get up to 40,000. You want to
Yes.
brush them off. I don't want to squish them.
There's a lot of them.
Yeah. All right.
And ultimately in beekeeping, you will squish some, but
On
there's
the bottom of the box yet. A lot
there's
of them.
All right.
so many of them.
Get out of there. I don't want to use too harsh of a tone.
That side, there's a lot of getting
That's
squished.
all right. That's all right. You're taking one for the team, I guess. You're all right. You're all right.
That's a frame they haven't drawn out.
All right.
Let's get to the brood. So this frame has capped honey.
Oh, very nice.
So underneath all these caps is honey, and they'll just keep that. Honey keeps forever, basically. And they'll eat that when their food stores get low. Their main source of food they call bee bread, and that's just made out of pollen. And you can see some of that. It's the otter colored, the reddish, the brown. So that's just packed in pollen, and that's protein heavy, and that's what they mainly eat. Here's more bee bread you can see, and you see the glint in these cells up here. That's uncapped honey. So that's nectar that they're still dehumidifying down to where it becomes honey. Then they'll cap it off with some wax and just keep it. We haven't seen any eggs yet.
Last time were the eggs in this box?
They were either in that one or they were in the top one.
Okay.
And like I said, eggs should be in the bottom, but bees are just a wild animal. And sometimes you can't control them. They just do what they want. So maybe they'll stick their eggs in the top box. There's not much you can do about that, but just wait for them to move in, essentially.
You want this swept off?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
That's like one of those.
Let's get it over the hive.
Now, does that mean is the queen in there, Corey?
I doubt it. She'd probably be on a frame.
Oh my gosh, it's like liquid bees. Corey, are you okay?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, this doesn't seem like this is going to make them happy.
I wouldn't.
Is that most of them?
That was the big beard of them, yeah. We'll give him a chance, sorry. Oh my gosh. I think they're crawling on me.
Same.
You are a brave cameraman.
So this frame is mostly honey. That's completely capped honey. There's some broken caps right there that'll fix that. There's some bee bread they have going right there. And same on the other side. Less capped honey, but still getting there. all of this I believe is also capped honey. And it's interesting because that's wildly different colored than the other one. So depending on where they draw the source of nectar, you know, what plants they get it from, they get different colored honey, beeswax, anything. Right here in this cell, you can see a larva. So that's an egg that's hatched. And right now, nurse bees are feeding it. And soon enough, it's going to be big enough they'll cap it over, it'll metamorphosize into an adult bee, and then come out and just start walking for the hive. Yeah, they have a lot of honey and whatnot coming up here.
So those are all the things you wanted to see, right, Corey?
We've yet to see eggs, but they do have the occasional larva. But I think they're more active on this end. I'm going to get over here. Yeah, this is all honey. But I don't think... So I think what this hive suffered from was we didn't expand it quick enough. There is the occasional larva in the middle of these eggs. Oops. Okay, yeah. So in this frame, all of these, you can see the little white curled worm, that's the larva of the bee. So all of those in about a week or so will be capped over and turn into a worker bee, and that's just going to add to the population of the hive. In, I don't know if the camera can pick it up, but specifically this cell and like that one, you see a little just white pinprick essentially, and that's the egg of the bee. It's really difficult to see. Ideally there'd be more, but they have a lot of larvae. So what the queen is just waiting on is more room to lay eggs. So she's just waiting for all of these to be drawn out with honeycomb. And once that can happen, she'll lay a bunch of eggs, the population will boom. I got into beekeeping about 2 years ago. I keep 2 hives myself at home. And I thought it'd be a fun thing to do for Clark Lindsay so they can just experience a beehive. That's something I'd never done. As I've learned, there's a lot of residents here who have either kept or known people who have kept beehives. So I think that's awesome. I think it's a great green message because as you saw in Masterpiece, some of these honeybees are absolutely foraging over there and in the resident gardens. And I think it's cool to think there's a lot of vegetables in there. Tomatoes, cucumbers, peppers. People grow a lot of stuff. And it's fun to think the food that they're eating was pollinated by this hive themselves. But that doesn't mean that this hive only goes there. Bees will travel 5 to 7 miles looking for food and water. So they're absolutely visiting these places, but they're going, you know, halfway across town or something, looking for other sources of food. Okay, I completely missed this. So in every single one of these hexes, you can see a tiny little white pinprick, and that's all eggs. I don't know if it comes up on the camera well. So that means the queen is alive and laying is very white honeycomb. I think that's interesting. So it's not important to find the queen, it's just important to find evidence of the queen, essentially. In here, there's more eggs and a bunch of baby larvae. They just hatched probably a few days ago. And so nurse bees, they're feeding them, just making sure they're alive. This bee right here is interesting. You can see they have pollen on the back of their legs. There you go. Whoops. And so they'll hand off the pollen to ones that come in, and they pack the pollen into bee bread, or they make it into honeycomb, whatever. A bee's job is determined by their age. So, like a newborn bee immediately goes to feeding young. And then as they age, they go into feeding more older young. Then they go into like foraging and guarding, being nurse bees for the queen.
They smashed some?
It might have, but that's just life, unfortunately. So it's very important to keep the queen alive, because if she dies and they don't raise a new one and you don't get a new one in there, then, or even if you get one in there but it's too late, they'll miss an entire generation doing a job. So they'll have nobody feeding the young or foraging for the nectar. So that will just collapse the hive completely. And that is the check of our new residence.
All right, so overall, you liked what you saw?
Yes, we saw eggs, we saw a lot of honey. We didn't see the queen, but like I said, that's fine, because we know she's alive if you see eggs.
How often do you check it?
We check the beehive every 2 weeks, roundabout, in the summer, just checking for the queen and for eggs. We might be able to take honey from the hive by August, September even. And if we can do that, I think it would be awesome if we could give it to the kitchen here and they could prepare something for the residents with local honey, because this honey would be as local as you can get it. And as you see here, some honey leaked over the side during checking. I must have like broken a cell or a cap or something. And that's not an issue. The bees will smell that, find that, and put it back in there. So they're very hard workers.
Hello, my name is Jacob Johnston, Community Program and Engagement Coordinator for the Urbana Park District. I really hope that you've been enjoying our CUWise content, and today I'm going to show you how to access all of that content from youtube.com anytime you'd like and absolutely free. The only thing you're going to need is an internet-ready computer, tablet, or smartphone, and let's go ahead and get started. So the first thing we would like to do is find an internet browser. For today, I'm going to be using Mozilla Firefox, so I'll go ahead and double-click it. And it's worth noting that today I'm going to be using a desktop computer, but again, you can access all of the same content from a tablet or smartphone through the YouTube app. All right, now that I'm in the internet browser, I'm going to locate the address bar at the top of the screen. It's this big white bar that says urbanaparks.org. However, I don't want to be at urbanaparks.org. I want to be at youtube.com. So I'm going to backspace out of all of that and instead type in youtube.com and hit enter on my keyboard. And while YouTube is loading, I did want to note, if YouTube is something you're unfamiliar with, don't stress about it. Find somebody who might be a little more familiar with YouTube, and I'm sure they'd be happy to show you the ropes. All right, now that YouTube is loaded, we're going to find the YouTube search bar. keeping in mind that we want to use this YouTube search bar and not the address bar at the top of the screen for our next step. So in the YouTube search bar, I'm going to type in UPTV6 and then hit enter on my keyboard. If everything goes as planned, we should see the channel UPTV6 here, and I'll click on the name in order to access the channel. Now, UPTV6 puts out an awful lot of content, so it's important that during this next step, you click playlists so that we only see the CU-wise content and not all of the other awesome content that they have. Although, if you do get bored of enjoying our CU-wise content, there's an awful lot more for you to check out here. But I'm going to click on playlists. All right. And our first playlist over here on the left says CU-wise TV. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that. All right. And if you've made it this far, then you have access to all of the CU-wise content that is currently published along the right side of the screen. It's going to be organized chronologically by date, so make sure to check it out and let us know how you like it. Again, my name is Jacob Johnston, and we really hope you enjoy CU-wise TV. See you next time.
Thank you for tuning into CU-wise TV. We hope you enjoyed the show. This video can be accessed anytime on youtube.com. In the YouTube search bar, type in UPTV6 and look for their microphone logo. We hope you will join us again next week for more local, engaging content designed specifically for Champaign County older adults. Take care and stay safe.